Relax your face. Right, just don't do anything with your face. Just don't do anything with your face. Just neutral.
I just feel like I look too serious now. Don't you think, honey? Honey, pay attention. Look at my face. Does it look too serious?
Why don't you just smile, huh?
No, because I look goofy when I smile. I want to look sexy and mysterious, like we talked about.
Why are you wearing all black? The people are gonna think you're in mourning.
Because black is slimming, okay? Catherine DeMady, she told me that the paintbrush adds 10 pounds.
So?
So? This is the only picture that's ever gonna exist of me in the world. I don't want to look like a fat cow.
Hey, I like a little meat on your bones.
Can we just pick an expression? Just a subtle expression. Sure, that's... whatever.
What the hell are you doing now?
I'm smizing.
What the hell is smizing?
I'm smiling with my eyes.
Why don't you smile with your mouth?
Oh my God, because that's not artistic, okay? Would you please explain to my moron husband?
Hey, what's up, guys?
Elizabeth, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I love this show.
Thank you.
It's so fantastic. How did it start? Is it one of those things that was just sort of an idea that you did on your own and then it kind of got picked up?
Funny you should say that. That is exactly how it happened. Yeah, we had a really not glamorous beginning. So basically, the show is called The Crossroads of History, and it's about different fateful moments in history that changed the world that people don't know about. And there'd been this one moment that had been stuck in my head for a long time, namely when Hitler applied to art school and got rejected, obviously. And that always seemed just like this crazy moment in history that must have just seemed completely mundane, that these admissions officers are just like, I don't know, here's this dude. And literally Hitler painted paintings of like pansies, like these pastel pansies.
Garbage.
Yeah, like, but they're also really sentimental, like daisies with babies, you know, that's what he paints. So, you know, here these admissions officers are looking at these paintings and being like, no, not realizing that they're inadvertently completely screwing the 20th century. So that was kind of the original idea, and
like, what would happen if he got accepted? Maybe he didn't become a professional artist, but he became a professor of some kind. Like, there are so many roads.
I know. I mean, what would he have become? I mean, I think I think Hitler would have become like a hotel artist. Like, that's kind of what he does. Like those seashells and shit that you see
Just really
in
angry.
Marriott's. Like, that's the kind of stuff he liked to paint. So I think that's what he would have done. But unfortunately, he was rejected, and the rest, as they say, is history. But so I had written the script that was about that moment, and I called up Paul Scheer, who I'd worked with before, and was like, hey, do you want to shoot this thing? And then this other comedian that I love, this guy Josh Fadem, who played young Hitler in the pilot, what ended up being the pilot episode. It was just supposed to be like a short that we were filming, and we didn't really know what was going to happen to it. And then just it kind of kept, things kept getting bigger and better from there. So yeah, the pilot we shot on spec, and just to give you a sense of how like run and gun the pilot was shot, we didn't have hardly any budget, and we needed a location that looked like fin de siècle Vienna on like no money. So that's next to impossible. So I was like, shit, how do we actually get this location to give us it for basically free? And so they finally agreed to it, but we had to barter with them and agree to film I'm not even exaggerating, this is literally what happened. We had to agree to film a wedding and a quinceañera for them, and that is how we got the location.
I've done that barter before. Where, oh yeah, sure, we'll shoot like a little commercial for you for your hotels or something like that.
By the way, it was originally just a wedding, and then like the last moment they were like, and a quinceañera. So
So they're really good negotiators.
I mean, they kind of had us by the balls, so we were like, sure. So
How have you gone about sort of finding other moments in history, like Mona Lisa, like John Wilkes Booth? After your obsession or getting over your obsession with Hitler's acceptance or lack of acceptance into art school.
You know, it's tricky because it's kind of not how history is told. You know, history books are mostly focused on these macro events that we've all heard of. And you don't really think about the moments, if you rewind a bit, the thing that set kind of the boulder in motion, right? The moth that landed on the boulder. So it was actually kind of tricky. We had this incredible consultant who was this like Oxford multi-PhD, this woman who's ridiculously overqualified to be working on my show. And I would like Skype with her, and one of the episodes is about King Louis XIV had an anal fistula, which is the reason it was the birth of modern surgery, like the reason that surgery is awesome today and not performed by hairdressers, which is how surgery used to be performed, is because King Louis XIV had this anal fistula. And so I was like, well, that's a great idea for an episode. And so then I'm on this Skype call with her. I'm like, how do I bring up that I need her to research like this ridiculously overqualified woman? Anyways, she was like, sent me 16 pages on King Louis's anal fistula, which is...
What exactly is an anal fistula?
Do you really want to know?
Yeah, do we want to know? Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay.
I wanted a much larger applause for anal fistula, by the way, I have to be honest.
Well, for those watching in front of a computer, you can just Google image it right now and then go barf. But basically, an anal fistula is when like an abscess forms in your butt. I don't exactly know why an abscess forms.
It's like a cyst kind of thing?
Yeah, like a cyst, just like a pussy...
A butt cyst.
Yeah, butt cyst. It's all up in there. And then it bursts.
So the fistula is when it bursts?
So the fistula is when it bursts, and then you get this like other asshole, basically, that sort of oozes stuff.
So it's a cyst that literally tears someone a new asshole.
It tears someone a new asshole, exactly. And so so that happened to King Louis XIV, and he was in a lot of pain. Obviously, that sounds pretty painful, but also he smelled like really bad. And by the way, Versailles, like for whenever you're watching those like fancy period pieces about Versailles, just know that Versailles smelled literally like shit. Like Versailles was a disgusting place. They didn't have like toilets. Like the king would just shit on a chamber pot in front of everybody, and. So it was like this really, really smelly thing. But fortunately for us, because the king had this terrible affliction, he brought in this barber surgeon. Because this is what happened. Is the surgery was performed by hairdressers.
This is one thing that I love about history. I love stories like this about history because so often history is looked at with reverence and this idea of how beautiful it was and how wonderful it was back then. And it's like, no, we as a society have progressed consistently every century and decade. And to look back at any period and be like, oh, it was better then. It's like, no, you're wrong. Yeah. It was not better then. And like you said, Versailles, while beautiful in the movies, was just smeared in shit.
Yeah, it was really pretty looking. It just smelled really gross. But in fact, like we're gonna stop talking about butts really soon, I promise. But I think this is a funny little tidbit that actually didn't make it into the episode, unfortunately. But one of the most coveted positions in the court of Versailles was to wipe the king's butt. Isn't that gross? So yeah, but you know what?
That didn't make it into the episode?
No, it didn't, because that's how much gross information I got that did make it into the episode that we couldn't even include that. But I do think that's true. We do look at history with this kind of reverence, and part of what I wanted to do with the show, and which is why all the characters speak really anachronistically, very modern, is because I wanted to make people really relate to the characters, and also just remember people are people throughout history, you know? So for the Mona Lisa episode that you saw the clip from, the thing that's a big mystery that I've been so fascinated by is Lisa and her husband commissioned this painting which was a really big thing. I mean, Da Vinci was a famous painter, and then they never took it home. So why the hell didn't they take it home? And we don't know, you know. And that's part of the fun of the show is as a creator, I get to like fill in the gaps of with my imagination. And you know, the thing that I could understand is like, ladies, I'm sure we can all relate to this. Like, you have to take 1,000 photos of yourself to get one that you actually like. And you know, I don't care if it's Leonardo da Vinci, you know, painting you're still probably not going to like the first one he did, right?
And he's not going to do a second one.
Also, Mona Lisa, no, I know, right? And Mona Lisa's like weird looking. I mean, I played her. I mean, that's not flattering. That's not a good look.
She's very strange looking. It was when I saw the Mona Lisa, it's at the Louvre, right? I believe
yeah, it's at the Louvre, yeah.
Yeah, when I saw it, my first impression was not what a beautiful painting. It was like, she is odd.
Yeah, she's weird looking.
And
like she forgot to draw on her eyebrows or something that day. It was weird. I don't know. It's a tough look. But anyway.
Have there been any sort of historical stories that you've sort of come up with but then decided not to do? Something that didn't fit into the show?
Yeah, there was like a lot of really fun ones that turned out to just not be true. You know, we tried to keep them like, you know, as historically accurate and as possible. And there would be these great stories, some of them that are in like history textbooks that just are not true if you really kind of poke at them. But
it is true that Hitler has one nut, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, he does have one nut. He had one nut, and he was a vegetarian.
He was a vegetarian?
Yeah. But did your history textbook have that he had one nut in it?
No.
Because I was obviously in the wrong history class.
I remember hearing that like later through people and then looking it up and still not really sure if it was true.
As far as I know, yes, it's true. I mean, I never
have anything to do with the one nut, or was it? I don't know why.
I don't know. I'm a vegetarian, so I just like to pretend he wasn't one of us. Yeah, I don't know. I think he was like a health nut. He didn't smoke and stuff like that. I think he was just sort of a healthy guy.
But he sweat all the time for someone who ate good food and didn't smoke or drink, you know?
I mean,
big sweater from all that from the footage that I've seen.
Yeah, he was like very like yeah, we were that's my Hitler impression.
A shockingly good impression of Hitler off the cuff.
Anyway,
so what were some things that you decided that you guys couldn't do or weren't truthful that you thought that you hoped were true?
There was this one tidbit I'd found where it was like some pope had decreed that cats were bad, and so people just killed cats en masse, and that led to a rise in the rodent population, which led to the Black Plague. And I was like, that's awesome. And then I started looking into it, and it's like, it just doesn't actually seem like that happened.
Were you any kind of history buff before this? Did you like history?
Yeah.
I mean, casually, maybe? Not really like a buff?
I wouldn't call myself a history buff, especially because my friends are all like Jeopardy champions and really legitimately smart. So I'm like the fun one.
Do you have friends? Do you have multiple friends that are Jeopardy champions?
I do. I know.
Something funny about like a dinner party where you go and it's only Jeopardy champions.
No, I literally 2 of them came to my wedding, and they were staying in this villa because I got married in Italy. Anyway, fancy. Anyway,
where in Italy?
It's in this little town called Borgo a Mozzano that like has like 60 people in it. But anyway, it's beautiful. It's in Tuscany. So, but anyway,
I just got back from Italy.
You did?
Yeah, but sorry, go ahead.
No, let's talk about Italy. Anyway, so yeah, but my 2 friends who were there were like, my friend who stayed in the room next to them was like, they were like doing math problems at night just for fun, and I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. But they're also super funny and fun. Anyway, but so I'm not a history buff. I would say I'm like definitely I love history. I think it's super interesting. I think it's sadly for the human race really rich comedic fodder. But I think in some ways the fact that I'm not a history buff allowed me to look at these stories from a different angle and with a fresh eye. Because, you know, my aunt actually is an honest-to-God historian, and she sent me a couple ideas for episodes, but she would always preface it being like, but I don't know how you're going to make this funny, you know? And I think that that's true. Like if you're a really serious historian, it's hard to see the comedy in it. But as an outsider, you know, we have an episode that's about this guy, John Frederick Parker, who's a totally real person. He was this alcoholic bodyguard of Abraham Lincoln. And he was one of these guys, I don't know, he must have had some dirt on one of his higher-ups because he kept just, like, failing upwards. Like, literally, he fell asleep on a trolley one day when he was supposed to be patrolling D.C., and the supervisor brought him in and was like, John, why were you passed out on a trolley? And his response was, I heard ducks quacking, and I went on board to investigate. And they were like, great, let's put you on the presidential detail. So that's the guy that was in charge of watching Lincoln the night of the Ford Theater shooting. Yeah, exactly. He was the only guy, right? Because this is before like the Secret Service and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, at intermission, guess what John Frederick Parker decides to do? He decides to go get drunk at the bar next door and by the way, the bar is like the size of this stage, teensy, okay? And John Wilkes Booth was also drinking in that bar at the same time to get some liquid courage. So we have a whole episode about that, about the two of them, you know, interacting.
And in that episode, you have a couple cameos by cast members from The Office, Angela Kinsey.
Oh yeah, we do. Yeah, we got really lucky with cast members from The Office on the show, and just cast in general.
Oscar Nunez is in an episode.
Yeah, we have Oscar Nunez and Brian Baumgartner who plays Kevin in The Office. He played John Frederick Parker, and then Angela Kinsey plays Connie, who's like the sort of barmaid who's dealt with John Frederick Parker's shit way too much, and you know, and then this guy Keir O'Donnell is a great actor, plays John Wilkes Booth. So
it's interesting, you know. We talk about the reverence that people have for history, and then we brought up Italy, and this is a side story. But when I was there was like a brief tour, and they were talking about ancient Rome, and people were so shocked to learn how people lived during ancient Rome that like when they had a baby that they didn't want, they put it in a bag and put it in the river.
Yeah.
That sewers and streets were like we said about Versailles were just flowing with sewage because they had no system. They didn't even know that it was bad for them. Almost.
I mean, Rome wasn't that bad. Like I'd say right after, because they had like aqueducts and stuff. I mean, they definitely were a step above what happened afterwards, which was just like, you know, I mean, like during the Crusades and stuff, you know, and when you had like the plagues and things like that, people were just filthy, and it was kind of like a point of pride to be just as filthy as possible about, you know, in Europe. Not in like the Middle East was like amazing. They were transcribing every single book that had ever been written into all these different languages, and in Europe, people were just like, I shit where I eat, you know. That's basically the Dark Ages, guys. That's all you need to know about the Dark Ages.
Were you surprised that this sort of sketch that you shot on spec got picked up like this? Did you have any intention with it, or were you just like having a good time?
Yeah, like a loose intention, you know. I mean, I had said to Paul and Josh, like, you know, it might be the start of a bigger show, but you know, you never know with this stuff. And I've had a lot of shows that, you know, I've written the script and they haven't gotten made, and so. So I've learned to be pretty. I don't know. You don't like get your hopes up.
You don't hold on too tight to the projects. Yeah.
And I thought it stood on its own, so I was happy with just if that's the only thing that ever comes of it. You know, I was really proud of how it turned out.
As the writer and kind of the creator, the originator of these ideas, how do you work with your directors?
Well, it depends. So I act in a lot of the episodes. So especially when I'm acting in them, I really can't be very hands-on while we're shooting. But yeah, I mean, I talk to the directors a lot beforehand, and you know, I mean, the whole show is a real collaboration. I mean, from the production designers who did. I mean, the Mona Lisa, that backdrop was hand painted. It's crazy. Yeah, we have so much talent. So yeah, so I think how did we work with the directors? I mean, you know, try to find really talented people who really got the tone that you know, I was going for, and we were lucky to find that, and then you know, kind of letting them do their thing.
Now, you told me a sort of interesting thing about yourself a few minutes ago in the green room. And then
Okay.
I was on your website, like right after, and I came across something. So you are an opera singer.
Yeah.
You can sing opera.
I can.
And you sang the opera sections of the Jackass 3D theme song.
That's true.
If you guys remember Jackass 3D, like I do, because I've seen all the Jackass movies several times, there is an opera singer in the opening, because it's all in the slow motion sort of them getting hit with things on the soundstage, right?
Yeah.
How did this
Spike
come
Jones
about?
filmed, I think, that segment, and it was really beautiful. It's really amazing looking segment. And I'm singing this, like, what sounds like a beautiful kind of opera rendition of the melody of the theme song, but I'm actually singing, I think it's like "Kick My Balls" in Latin. So, yeah. So, really fancy, guys. Really, I have quite a fancy career. So.
How did that happen?
I mean, it's not like I knew a bunch of the people that were involved with the Jackass movies. My husband does music, and so I don't know if it was Spike who had the idea to have it do the opening as an opera theme. But, you know, it's not like you throw a stone and hit an opera singer, you know? So, I mean, I was kind of the one they knew.
So you got the job.
I got the job, yeah.
And you're still singing these days, not
Yes.
opera singing, but you are still a singer. You've been singing in
Yes.
New York while you've been in town, right?
Yeah. I just a couple nights ago, I don't know if you guys watch Boardwalk Empire. Yeah, I know. So the guy, this Vince Giordano and the Nighthawks, he's the guy who did all the music for Boardwalk Empire, and his band is what's in the show whenever you see a band. So I just sang with them, which was really fun. I really like 20s and 30s music. I basically just like everything from the past.
Live in the past a little bit.
I know. So I sang with them, and then I have a 10-piece jazz band out in Los Angeles, and we perform at this this club that doesn't have a name. So
that's a cool club.
Yeah, it's very cool. It is very cool. It's owned by the guy who manages like Ed Sharp and the Magnetic Zeros, and so if you're in Los Angeles, July 14th,
Try to find it.
do
Doesn't have a
your
name.
best.
Walk around and ask people if they
just-
know the bar that's owned by the guy who manages Ed Sharp and the Magnetic Zeros.
I know it sucks for publicity purposes. Just like, do your best. But yeah, so that's another side of me. It's very fun. Yeah.
Let's open it up to questions from the audience. First question.
Hey, Elizabeth, how's it going?
Hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I'm Brandon.
Hi, Brandon.
So, I know you're very multi-talented and things of that nature. So, how do you use your talent to create your projects? And my second question is, what got you into opera?
And what got me out of it? How do I use my many talents? Was that the first question?
Yes.
Thank you. I will give you $5 after the show. I don't know. You know, listen, I feel like, in short form stuff, it's very DIY. So the more hyphens you have, it's sort of like the less glamorous. It's just like you have to wear so many hats. But I also think it's really fun to have the opportunity to get to do so many different things. And I've been acting and writing for years, so that was sort of just a natural fit. How did I get into opera? I got into opera because I started taking voice lessons, and when you take voice lessons, that's kind of what they hawk. Like, that's kind of the thing. They start teaching you like classical music, and then I started to get into it, and I don't know. There's a lot. I'm a kind of like ridiculous person. I like the like drama and everything. I liked the whole storylines of dying of tuberculosis, and I was like, yeah, I can get into that. And then I found out that basically my voice is too small to play those roles, because it's kind of like a sports player. It's like if you're a linebacker, you got to be built like a linebacker. You can't just like want to be one, right? So I wasn't built like a tubercular heroine. I was built like a shepherdess, and I was like, well, fuck that. So that's basically why I don't do opera anymore.
What's your favorite opera?
Oh, I don't know. I really like Lucia di Lammermoor. It's like one where this like chick goes crazy on her wedding night and kills someone and is like covered in blood. And I kind of wanted my wedding to be like themed like that. So yeah.
Why is she covered in blood? Oh, it's Lucia di Lammermoor. Don't
Yeah,
worry. It's
yeah.
part of the wedding's theme.
I told you I'm ridiculous. So anyway.
Next question.
Hi.
Hi.
I love the show.
Oh,
It's hilarious.
thank you so much.
I noticed in the Hitler
Yeah.
applying to art school sketch,
Yeah.
one of the paintings you used would have been painted after World War I.
Absolutely.
So I was just wondering how you balance the comedy and the historical accuracy.
Well, good catching.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, the stuff that Hitler actually applied with were these like kind of boring sketches. So we made a decision, and I think throughout the show, I always put comedy first. If I thought that us playing with the time was in service of the emotional journey of the character. So if I thought that gave us more emotional insight. So I think the paintings that we chose, I think are a real insight into Hitler. I think that the fact that he has paintings of a field of daisies with like, you know, babies, that is, and juxtapose that with what actually people were painting at the time, which was like really edgy. So when the admissions officers are like, sorry, Hitler, you're just not edgy enough for us, that's kind of true, you know? But then we know in hindsight that like, oh, don't say that to Hitler, you know? So I think I was always willing to play with stuff like that. You know, in the Mona Lisa episode, there's a reference to the Sistine Chapel, which, you know, Michelangelo painted and Da Vinci didn't, and they had this kind of rivalry. And it technically hadn't been painted yet. It was like a few years later. But, you know, playing with some of that stuff to show more about the character, I was always willing to do. But not huge jumps, you know, so. But I'm glad you like the show.
I think we have time for one more question.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hey.
I wanted to know if you could travel back in time to any historical point and live out the rest of your life, which time would it be?
That's a great question. Gosh, there's so many times that would be scary as shit to live in, including now, though, by the way, like kind of scary time. So let's go back. Let's go somewhere else. The thing that popped into my mind first was Alexandria right before Jesus was born, because things really change when Jesus is born. But before that, it was a really interesting time when like Cleopatra was running things. She was this like badass lady, and Alexandria was a pretty awesome place for women to live. Like women, I think, owned like a third of the property, and this is like, you know, more than 2,000 years ago. It's a long time ago. Women had better rights than they did like, you know, a few hundred years ago, or even now in some places, right? So I think that sounded fun. And also like Cleopatra was just a cool chick. She liked to party a lot. Her and Mark Antony had this, they had this like club. I think it was called the Club of Inimitable Livers. And they would just party for days. And that sounds fun.
Inimitable livers?
Yeah, inimitable livers.
Inimitable livers.
Yeah, or however you say that in like, you know.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Egyptian or whatever they were speaking, but I'm sure it rolled off the tongue more, right? But yeah, so I think that sounds like a fun time. And then I think, you know, once the Holy Roman Empire happened, it just wasn't as great for women. So I think I'd go back.
Elizabeth, when can people see the Crossroads of History?
Right now. It's like, yeah, so the first season just aired on the History Channel, which is really cool. History did this whole late night comedy block, and our show was paired with Dan Harmon, who created the show called Community, you may have heard of. Kind of amazing. Anyway, he did also another show, so we were paired together. But now probably the easiest place to see it is on YouTube. Maker Studios, who was our studio for the show, they have a YouTube page, Nacho Punch, and that's probably the easiest place to go see it.
And they're really great. They're super funny. Yeah, if you haven't seen any of them, or if you've seen some but not all, you should go to the page and watch all of them. They're so great.
Yeah, and they're short. They're like 10 minutes a piece, so yeah. And you can put whatever you really think about the show on the comments, because it's YouTube. So
don't do it. I mean, unless it's nice,
no,
don't do that. Don't do
no.
it.
No, people have been nice.
Thank you so much for coming
Thank
by.
you.
Thanks for talking to me. Congratulations.
guys.
on the show.